There's nothing a retired governor can do about the Soviets, but a president, now he can do a thing or two.
Welcome to your life.
I was a lifeguard on a river.
There's no turning back.
And I learned how to read the currents. Not just the ones on the surface, but also the ones deep underneath the water.
I am about to start the biggest war of this century, and I'm not going to fire a single shot.
You're gonna blow up 8 years of diplomacy.
Well, if you think that got their undies in a wad, you just wait.
What did the president know, and when did he know it?
What would you have me do?
I want you to fight!
Everybody wants to. Everybody
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Wants to rule the world.
Hey guys, welcome to another edition of By Faith. I'm your host, Frank Shelton, and it's my honor to be with you. And wherever you're at in the world, just know you're not alone when you walk and talk with God. I got a great show for you. A lot's been going on. I'm going to share it again. Fear is false evidence appearing real. Fear honors the devil, but my friends, like the show, faith honors God. Jesus said, when I return, will I find faith on the earth? I want to encourage you. Maybe it's been a while since you've been in the house of God. It's never too late to come back home. Maybe you used to play out with some of the friends at the basketball court, maybe at the baseball field, you were at the football, and you could hear your mom 2 blocks away screaming, it's time to come home. And you know, at one time you probably despised that voice, but I'm telling you, maybe your mom's no longer this side of heaven, and you would love to have heard it one more time. So just like your earthly mom was calling you home, you have a Father in heaven who would rather die for you than live without you, and he's calling you, come on home. You know, I wasn't much of a drinker in the bars, but I've been told you'll always hear 2 words right before they close, and it's last call. And that's encouraging folks to come one more time. If you're going to get a drink, now's the time. No, I'm not advocating the king of beers, but I'm still preaching the King of Kings. But I'm telling you, tomorrow's not guaranteed. Jesus said, today is the day of salvation. And this could actually be the last call you'll ever have to receive Christ. So tomorrow could be too late. Why wait? And you have a date, not with destiny, but a date with the divine. And the reason your rearview mirror is smaller than your car windshield, because where you're going with God is more importantly than where you've been with the devil. Let me just give you a praise report, what God's been doing. I want to thank all of our partners and prayer warriors. Without you, we couldn't do what God's called us to do. And ministry is a team effort. I just had the honor to preach Sunday, September 1 at Glen Burnie, Maryland. This was the 7th time Pastor Paul invited me back. I love those people. At North Glen Community Church, God gave me a new message. God shook the place. I think we had 8 salvations. The entire altar was full. And I'm going to share just a little bit of that sermon in the near future. But you can go online, frankshelton.com, go to podcast, and you'll find the message, and it will bless you. Drove 110 miles back, picked up my wife Ruth and Andrew, got them in the car, drove 124 miles north of Baltimore to catch up with the River Church in Baltimore. Our dear friends, Pastor Tony and Karen Carpenter, have done an amazing work, and Pastor Rodney Howard-Brown flew in from Tampa, Florida, and they dedicated their brand new church. You're not going to believe this. A couple years back, they were staff evangelists at the Great River Church in Tampa, one of the largest churches in America, and they felt led to step out, like the show, by faith, and they were going to plant a church in Baltimore. Tony's from Maryland originally. I was born in D.C., lived in Maryland all my life. On their way coming back from Tampa, heading to Maryland, the first stop they ever made coming home, they came to our house for dinner. It was a time of prayer. They shared their vision. And outside of Pastor Rodney Howard-Brown, I believe we were the first people to sow into that ministry before it even started. And they have outgrown 2 different venues, and the church grand opening Sunday night, where Pastor Rodney flew in, are you ready for this? They bought an old Best Buy store, and 1,000 687 showed up for a Sunday night service to inaugurate their brand new sanctuary. How did they do it? Preach the word, love others, and win the lost to Christ. Just in the last 4.5 years, God has used their team, their ministry to canvass Baltimore, Timonium, Glen Burnie, that whole region. 55,000 people have prayed to receive Christ out on the streets. They have a dream to one day pack out Camden Yards, home of the Baltimore Orioles, for a revival. And that should encourage every clergyman and Christian watching. I'm telling you, we just can't expect folks to come to the church. The church needs to go to the people. So well done, Pastor Tony, Karen. It was great to see you. And this week I'm at Bethesda Baptist Church in Washington, D.C., preaching for my dear friend, Pastor Michael Thompson, a dear brother of mine. He's the state coordinator on staff with Billy Graham. It's an entirely African-American church. This is probably my 5th time coming. And man, they treat me like family. And it's always an honor when you have a little bit of ebony and ivory and a lot of God. And I'm telling you, I can't wait to hear what God does. Later in the month, I'm going to be flying to Nashville, Tennessee. I'm going to be speaking at a large outdoor event, a God and Country event. Dove Award winners, Grammy nominated, the Isaacs are going to actually be leading in worship. There'll be many others, and I have the honor to preach Saturday night. I think they're expecting 4,500 on the lawn, so just shy of 5,000. It's going to be a great time. I'm speaking in the morning at a church, New Hope, Westmoreland, Tennessee. Then they're going to have me speak for a second time, day 2 of that outdoor festival. And then the following weekend, my dear friend, 8-time world wrestling champ Nikita Koloff, the Russian Nightmare, now an evangelist of the gospel, is flying in from North Carolina. I'll pick him up at Reagan, D.C. We're going to drive to Delaware, and him and I both are speaking at a Man Up men's dinner Friday night, September 27th. You can go to my website for more, frankshelton.com. I believe it's arguably the largest church in all of that part of Delaware, Crossroads Community Church, Pastor Rick Betts in Georgetown, Delaware. And I'm telling you, God's going to do a great, great work. And then Sunday morning, we'll be at Bethel Tabernacle Church with my dear friends, Pastor Dennis and Kathy Milner in Frankfort, Delaware. Love to see you. October, we take off. I've just been invited in Pennsylvania to preach, Lord willing, Fort Myers, Florida to preach. And I'll be returning for the 3rd time to preach at Truth or Consequences, New Mexico for 4 days. I've been asked to speak at a 48-county revival. You ready for this? They're trying to hit 48 counties in 4 days. So I'm telling you, Christianity is not a spectator sport. We got to get in the game for God's glory. I also want to talk to you real quick. On September 11th, I have the honor to return at the Museum of the Bible, and we're going to honor my dear friends, Pastor Nate and Amber. Nathan Kistler and Amber Nealon Kistler were 2 of the 7 people that recently perished in that plane crash. And Nathan and I did a lot on Capitol Hill. Nathan was the executive director of Hope to the Hill, a ministry to members of Congress. Amber was with the Grammy-nominated group, the Nealons, one of the best Southern gospel music. When their family died just last month in the plane, their new release was just released Friday. And 4 weeks after their death, first day released, it went #1 on iTunes. And I'm just honored to be there at the Museum of the Bible. My wife Ruth and son will be with me. And then Nathan's father, Dave Kessler, one of my heroes of the faith, has asked me right after the Museum of the Bible that night. They're having a private event at the U.S. Capitol in the Rotunda. And they have asked me to be not only one of the speakers, but to close in prayer with members of Congress and the audience, honoring Nathan and Amber. We pray for the sister remaining Autumn and her husband. And I'm telling you, even in loss, there's great victory. I just want to share this. There's some great faith-filled family films that just came out this weekend or getting ready to come out. #1, if you haven't seen the new movie, The Forge, it's fantastic. It's an amazing Christian film. It's about family. It's about faith. It's about friends and the freedom and future we have in Christ. You absolutely got to go see it. huge rave reviews. If you haven't seen the new Reagan, I'm going to talk briefly about that. I was just on the phone with one of President Reagan's former speechwriters, my dear friend Dale Davidson, now in Vegas. And I'd like to bring him on the show one day soon to talk about what it was like to be a speechwriter for President Reagan. It also done extremely well on opening weekend. My dad used to protect Reagan at the U.S. Capitol. And I'm telling you, what we need more than ever is things that honor Christ. It shouldn't be wrong to love America. And the answer is still not in the red, white, and blue. It's in the red, rich, royal blood of Jesus, who died for me and you. But I do hope you'll get a chance to see the new film starring Dennis Quaid Reagan. And then the Newsboys, my friends Michael Tate, former lead singer of DC Talk from the DMV, my hometown, is in the new movie God's Not Dead 5, In God We Trust. And ironically, what are the odds? They actually have a glimpse of Reagan. But more importantly, it's all about the Redeemer. I'm going to show you a clip of that as we cut to the radio show. Be praying for us. I'm praying for you. If you'd like to donate and help the cause, you can go on the screen today, frankshelton.com, donate. And the word of the day is, why live in fear when you can live by faith?
Christians are being called to deliver hope to a country that's feeling hopeless. Why was America, what was it built on? What were the principles that it was built on? And that's what God's Not Dead, In God We Trust is all about.
We're 6 weeks out from Election Day. And remember, this is a fight for the soul of our nation. We're at a tipping point, I really believe, in this country. Democracy was always fragile, so we have to have our faith.
I think our country is so divided right now over so many different things. And does God have a place there in our political system? Does it influence us as believers and who we are?
There are more ordained ministers in Congress right now than ever before in all of American history. Why do you think that is, David?
The recurring theme is really the title, that God isn't dead. He's at work in our world. And he's working through people, sometimes ordinary people.
Did Reverend Dave set out to be in politics? Not at all. But God has an interesting way of using us in ways that we would never imagine. I'm not a politician.
Do you think the country really needs another politician?
I discovered that politics is a really dirty game.
You don't win unless you play by their rules.
I've already lost if I do. That's one of the great things about these films, is that there's something in them for everybody, you know, and there's something in there for families and all ages.
In God we trust, in God we trust, 'cause there is power in his name.
We still get comments today all the time on how that movie, you know, affected people and their daily life.
It'd be a mistake to underestimate this guy. People love an underdog story. People should come see this film and all the God's Not Dead movies. And I pray that we return to being a country that values tradition and values who we are as Americans.
How do you know it's God?
You know someone long enough, you begin to recognize his voice.
It talks about real people, real relationships. You can relate to all the characters, and they're all going through something.
This movie is going to be, I think, really even more powerful, or just as powerful as the first one. 40 million Christians don't vote. And another 15 million aren't even registered.
And I think that if we don't make some big changes in this country, we could lose our country. We could lose the freedoms that we have taken for granted. That concerns me very much.
In God we trust.
My friend's flown 2 million miles on the current Air Force One. I've had the honor to be on the very same plane, the 747. And I heard of a story. He was with George W. Bush when he was president. The two planes were in Italy. Nancy Reagan called crying that Ronald Reagan passed. President Bush flew one of the backup planes all the way back from Italy to California, picked up the Reagan family, and flew the casket all the way back to D.C. Here's the catch. Ronald Reagan was flying on an old 35-year-old 707, and it was during his presidency that they bought the plans to build the majestic 747s. Reagan never flew on it alive. His first time flying on it is when he was deceased. Legacy is what will benefit everybody but you.
Public baptism. You have said the greatest moment of your life.
Yes, without a doubt.
Terry, What did that mean for you?
It broke down that fourth or fifth wall to tell people the truth about my Lord and Savior, how, you should look at things or how you should care for people and not judge people. And it set me free. It wasn't that perfect vessel that I should be or should have been. Once I was baptized, I felt I was all anew. It really was a major pivot in my life.
The set. God
Frank,
bless you, champ.
Thank you for having me today.
Tell us some of the folks that you wrestled with back in the day.
Oh my gosh. I was in kind of, I guess it was called the Attitude Era of professional wrestling. I wrestled against The Rock and wrestled with Hulk Hogan and Bret the Hitman Hart and the Triple H, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Undertaker, you name it, I've been in the ring with them.
That's amazing. Well, you've been with the best, you've beat the best, but you've had some tough opponents, but what would you say your greatest obstacle has been in life?
Well, I think with many young people today, we believe that money and fame is the key to happiness. It's kind of what the media portrays to young people today. All these people that are rich and famous are so happy. But, it's not success that's the key to happiness. It's truly that happiness is the key to success. And true happiness can only be found in a relationship with Jesus Christ.
Amen.
My mom would be at all my sporting events. Let's say I was playing football, okay? My mother would be on the sidelines, and if the play on the field started going one way, my mother would run along like, Mark, get him, get him! I'd be like, oh my gosh. I'd get in the huddle with the other guys, they go, Mark, is that your mother? I go, no, I never saw her before in my life. See, the greatest gift my mother ever gave me, she believed in me. I have overdosed on drugs on 3 occasions where I should have been dead. But I believe I was kept here for a reason. You show me your friends, I will show you your future. How do I know this? I hung out with losers, and I became the biggest loser of them all because I gave up everything I dreamt about as a little boy because of who I chose to surround myself with. My friends would drive me home at 2, 3, 4 in the morning. We'd be drunk and high, laughing in the car. We'd pull up in front of my house in New York. They go, Mark, the light's on. I go, oh man, my mother's up. See, my mom wouldn't go to bed until she knew her son was still alive. I'd walk in, she'd say, hi Mark, how was your night? I go, it was good, Mom, I'm just gonna go to bed. She goes, can I talk to you for a minute? I go, Mom, I'm tired, I'm just gonna go to bed. She goes, Mark, I haven't seen you all day and all night. Can I please talk to you? I said, man, just leave me alone. You bug me. I'd slam my bedroom door on the one person who believed in me. I was on a worldwide tour and we were wrestling overseas in Japan. After my wrestling match, I went upstairs in my hotel room and I fell asleep. There was a knock at my door at 3 o'clock in the morning. I got out of bed and I looked through the safety window and I could see it was a Japanese promoter. So I opened the door and he said, Mark, you need to call home. There's been an emergency. I went and got on the hotel room phone. I called back to the United States. I said, hey, what's going on? They said, Mark, I don't know how to tell you this. I said, just tell me what happened. All of a sudden they started crying. They go, Mark, I can't tell you. I said, just say it. They said, Mark, your mother died. I just threw the phone down. I ran out of my hotel room. I took the elevator to the lobby, and when the doors opened up, I just ran out into the street. I mean, there was no cars, there was no people. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. And I walked down the middle of a street in Hiroshima, Japan, and I remember looking up and just saying, Mom, I am so sorry. I flew home for her funeral, and I was so nervous to walk up to her casket, so I just stood way in the back. And I kept looking from a distance. I kept thinking to myself, Mom, please wake up. Please get up. And then I finally got the nerve to walk up to her. And as I got closer, I could see my mom for the first time. I mean, she was so beautiful. She was dressed in white. I mean, she looked like an angel. And I just stood over her and I said, Mom, you are my hero. Everything I am, everything I hope to be was because of you. You loved me so much, you gave me a life. You're the only one that ever believed in me. How did I repay her? By getting drunk by getting high, by getting stupid, by hanging out with losers. For what? All she ever wanted to do was talk to me. I wish I could talk to you now, Mom. I wish you could see what I'm doing. Why couldn't I have been a better son? We are defined by our choices. But if you surround yourself with people involved in drugs and alcohol and pills, it's a dead end. I'm not here to preach to you. I'm here to tell you I lived that life. It leads to broken hearts, broken relationships, broken dreams, and death. For what? To get high? If you have a mother or a father, when you go home, tell them how much you love them. See, my whole life was about being rich and famous. I had to be a millionaire. I had to win the race. I had to win the race at the expense of my marriage, my family, my friends. For what? To be all alone in the world? I learned what is truly important, and that is how precious this gift of life is, and our families, and how quickly it can be taken away. See, I no longer live in time, I live in moments. See, it's not what's in your pocket that matters, it's what's in your heart that truly matters. Love is just a word until somebody comes along and gives it meaning. You're the meaning.
It's official. Download the Frank Shelton Global app today. It's free. Stay up to date with current events, Frank's powerful sermons, the By Faith TV and radio show, and his calendar. The app even comes with a Bible for easy use and Ruth's very own corner, and a section for you to share prayer requests and praise reports. Folks are enjoying Frank's wit and wisdom coast to coast and around the world. Join this exciting Christian community to help you grow in your journey with Jesus. Don't miss out, and it's filled with humor and heaven on earth. Don't delay. Download the app today.
It was the 1940s or so when there was a professor who was in England. His name was Professor Orr, O-R-R. He taught theology at a university there. He decided to take some of his theology students, this is the 1940s, he decided to take them on an excursion, a field trip, so to speak. And so he gathered up his students and he said, we're going to go visit some of the historical places here in England that have some sort of theological significance. He took them to many religious sites, some that had been very strategic in the building up of the church and in the Christian faith. And one of the places that they visited was the Epworth Rectory, which would have been the home, the living place, the study place of one of the great reformers of the church. His name was John Wesley. John Wesley sort of put in place much of the theology upon which the church that you attend, that I attend, a lot of that foundational theology was crafted by reformers like John Wesley. So John Wesley would study, he would teach, he would preach, he would pray that revival would spread out, not only in England, but he prayed for it here in our country, that revival would break out. He and others like him ushered in prayer, some of the great revivals that swept through America in the early 1900s, where people in mass were coming to know Jesus Christ as Lord, where the heavens seemed to be open in an unusual way, and revival broke out in a way that has made the history books that we still look back on now and recognize the fire of God's Spirit that spread during that time period. It's because guys, many of them, like John Wesley, were on their knees praying that God would move. So these theology students went and they visited this rectory, this house where he lived, and they went in the kitchen. Professor Orr showed them all where John Wesley would have eaten his lunch and his dinners where he would have cooked, where he would have lived his life there. Took him into the study where John Wesley would have studied. These theology students were enamored because, of course, some of the old books that John Wesley would have studied from, that he had written in, some of those notes they had preserved, they were still there on the desk and on the bookshelves. And so the theology students were feeling the spines of those books, just enjoying the richness of this history. And then Professor Orr walked the students up to the second floor where the most intimate quarters of John Wesley would have been his bedroom, walked in the bedroom, and the students began to file around the bed in the tiny space in that bedroom. And as they all filed into the room, one of them noticed as they got around the far side of the bed that there were two small patches, well-worn patches in the carpet fibers of the floor. They were right next to each other and they were beside the bed. And he asked his professor about those patches that were worn right there beside the bed. And Professor Orr explained that it is said that those two patches were the actual places where every single morning, not for a minute or two, but for several hours on end, John Wesley would plant his knees right beside his bed. And he had prayed so long and so hard for revival that his knees had actually imprinted themselves onto the floor, that the carpet fibers were worn as he prayed for revival. So the students stood in there for a moment. And after a few moments, they left the room. They went downstairs. They all got on the bus to go to the next location. Professor Orr stood at the front of the bus, counted the students to make sure everybody was there. And he realized one was missing. He walked back into the house, went into the kitchen to look for the student. Nobody was there. Went into the study to look for the student. Nobody was there. Walked up the stairs into the bedroom. And he could just see across the other side of the bed the head and shoulders of a student who had planted his knees down in those well-worn patches on the floor. And he could hear the student praying, "Do it again, Lord. Lord, would you do it again? And would you do it again with me?" Professor Orr walked around the side of the bed. He put his hand on the shoulder of the student, and he said, "It's time to go." And rising from his knees, Billy Graham went and joined the rest of the students on the bus that day. And then God did it again.